Morning light slid across the balcony, turning the ocean into polished glass. My newlywed husband and I are enjoying our honeymoon, nothing important. Just beaches and excuses to do nothing when my phone vibrated against the table. I glanced down, and rubbing my eyes to read the message more carefully, Erla. Your role is being eliminated as part of an operational restructure. Your access will be revoked today. HR will email you the details. Calvin. No greeting, no call, no explanation. Just my name. A verdict and a signature. I read it again. Slower this time, as if punctuation might soften it. It didn't. There was no meeting on the calendar, no warning, no handover request. Just a decision delivered like a cancellation notice, timed perfectly between coffee and a honeymoon swim. This might not be the right time. The weather is beautiful, but I feel strangely empty inside. I wonder what the weather is like where you live right now if you're still here. Please leave your lucky number, so I know we're together in this moment. I turned the phone toward my husband and managed a thin smile. Looks like I'm unemployed. The words felt wrong in my mouth. Not dramatic enough. Not accurate enough. Later, I wasn't an executive with a corner office or a personal brand. I was the final human checkpoint in a global logistics system that moved food, medicine, and fuel across continents. When automation froze for legal or safety reasons, my approval restarted everything. I didn't own the system. I protected it from shortcuts, from pressure, from exactly this kind of carelessness. Calvin Rourke had stepped in as Chief Operations Officer 3 weeks earlier, confident, efficient, proud of cutting friction. In his first town hall, he smiled and promised to optimize people the same way he optimized processes. He said it like it was modern leadership. The problem wasn't personal, it was procedural. You don't remove a final approver by text message. You don't eliminate a control role without a transfer. You don't confuse authority with continuity. I didn't reply. I didn't argue. I opened my laptop, followed the policy Calvin had never bothered to read, acknowledged separation, and relinquished access. Then I logged out. Somewhere far away, a system noticed the absence it was designed to respect. From that moment on, the story is no longer simple. And do you know? What follows contains fictional elements and is I assisted to highlight the humanistic message and emotional experience. Hopefully, you'll find something for yourself. If not, take good care of yourself, and we'll see each other again later. I learned early that crisis work is quiet work. It happens at night, between legal opinions and system alerts. When everyone else wants a shortcut and no one wants a signature. I spent years standing between automation and consequence, translating risk into language both engineers and lawyers would sign, when a shipment stalled or a safety flag tripped. My job was not speed, it was restraint. There were nights I stopped rollouts because a single clause wasn't documented, because temporary exceptions never stay temporary. I blocked features labeled convenient, efficient, harmless. Each time, someone sighed. Each time. The system survived another audit, another regulator, another lawsuit that never happened. Calvin Rourke entered those rooms like a stopwatch. He cut me off mid-sentence. That's overkill, he'd say, tapping a dashboard. We saved 3% this quarter. He liked numbers that smiled back. He disliked warnings that slowed applause. When I asked for a delay, he called it friction. When I asked for a handoff, he called it bureaucracy. The contrast sharpened during a regional outage. I signed the final approval that rerouted supply without breaking compliance. Hands steady, notes meticulous. Across the hall, Calvin popped champagne over green KPIs, congratulating the team for record efficiency. The system moved again because someone had waited. I never corrected him. Quiet work rarely asks for credit. It asks for continuity. The irony settled slowly. Then, all at once, the safeguards I protected weren't personal favors. They were reflexes. Systems remember what people forget. Calm arrived the way it always did for me as a checklist, after the message, after the silence, after the small courtesy smile I owed my husband. I opened my laptop, not to argue, not to fix, to finish properly. Years of training had drilled one truth into me, when authority ends. Responsibility must be closed cleanly. I didn't delete files. I didn't reroute traffic. I didn't touch a single configuration that could be accused of intent. I followed the separation protocol line by line, the one written for moments when a human must step away without contaminating the system. Access review, credential relinquishment, session acknowledgement, no drama, no warnings, no final email sent to stir panic. Every step felt almost ceremonial. This was ethics, not obedience. I had signed those policies myself after arguing for their existence. They protected companies from people, and people from companies. They assumed good faith and punished negligence without raising a voice. The screen confirmed what I already knew. A neutral banner appeared, dull and precise, final human confirmation unavailable. No alarms, no red text, just a statement of fact, logged and time-stamped, ready for anyone sober enough to read it. I paused there longer than necessary, not out of doubt, but out of respect. Systems deserve clean exits. Humans do too. I closed the remaining sessions and logged out. Somewhere beyond the resort, beyond the glass and water. A different clock noticed. Safeguards don't shout when they wake. They count. A silent timer began its descent toward safe mode. Not as punishment, but as design. The system was doing what it had always been trained to do when the last responsible human disappeared. I shut the laptop and set it aside. The ocean kept its rhythm. My phone stayed quiet. Calm, I realized, can be dangerous when it's earned. It wasn't anger holding me steady. It was discipline, the kind that trusts process over impulse, and knows consequences don't need a shove. They arrive on schedule, precisely calibrated, indifferent to titles, waiting patiently for the moment. Rules are ignored, without apology or explanation ever. Monday arrived without asking my permission. By the time Calvin Rourke walked into headquarters, his confidence filled the floor before he did. He nodded at screens, adjusted his jacket, and smiled like numbers always obeyed him. I wasn't there, but I knew the posture. It was the stance of someone expecting applause. Reports didn't applaud. They bled. Warehouse indicators turned amber, then red. Dock schedules stalled mid-cycle. Trucks waited with engines idling. Paperwork frozen. Partner confirmations timed out one by one. Polite notices turning into firm refusals. The system wasn't broken. It was careful. Calvin's voice cut through the room. Just override it. He said it the way people say please when they mean now. Fingers hovered. Nothing moved. Legal cleared their throat. We legally can't, someone said. Steady and exhausted. Silence followed. The kind that spreads. He tried again. Sharper. Who owns the final approval? A pause. A search. A sinking realization. Ownership wasn't the question. Authorization was. The dashboards showed dependencies like a map of veins, all converging on a single requirement that hadn't been met. I imagined the room then. The slow panic disguised as productivity. Emails drafted and deleted. Calls placed on hold. A manager whispering that regulators were watching. Another reminding him the contracts required a named human checkpoint. Calvin laughed once, short and brittle. Find her login. They found it. Or rather, they found the absence. An audit trail with no drama. Just truth. Final human confirmation unavailable. Session closed by policy. Access relinquished. Time-stamped. Irreversible, without process. The color drained from the room. What they called a glitch was a mirror. Every red square pointed to the same place. The same account. The same quiet exit. I hadn't pulled a lever. I had removed my hands. The system did the rest, efficiently, impartially, and right on schedule. That knowledge felt clean and cold. I took no calls. I sent no explanations. The pleasure wasn't spite. It was symmetry. Rules met reality. Authority met limits. Monday kept going, and for once, the math didn't lie. Everyone noticed the silence before the sirens outside. The shift from chaos to order began quietly, the way justice usually does, by late Monday. The legal team stopped asking how to restart operations and started asking why they couldn't. They pulled policies, contracts, and audit trails into one room and did what lawyers do best when panic fails: read everything. There was no handover document, no signed acknowledgement of transfer, no interim approver named. Each absence was highlighted, tagged, and stacked like evidence, not excuses. Someone said, "We assumed HR handled it," another replied. "Assumptions aren't controls." Pens stopped tapping. Then my termination message was printed. Plain paper, black ink, no flourish. They placed it at the center of the table as if it might explain itself. It didn't. The words were short, decisive, and devastatingly incomplete. Eliminated. Effective immediately. HR will follow up. One executive finally asked, "Where's the transition plan?" No one answered. The review moved backward, minute by minute. Who authorized the termination? Who verified continuity? Who certified compliance? Each question landed on the same name: Calvin Rourke. He had skipped the checklist, bypassed legal sign-off, and removed a control role without appointing a successor. Not an error. A decision. Silence thickened. Someone said, softly, "He violated our own separation protocol." Another added, multiple times. The room recalibrated. The problem was no longer a system outage. It was governance failure. I watched none of it, but I understood the sequence perfectly. Process doesn't care about intent. It measures actions. The more they read, the clearer it became. The safeguards hadn't trapped the company. They had documented its leadership by the end. My message wasn't a footnote. It was Exhibit A. The irony was clean. The person who preached efficiency had created the most expensive inefficiency of all by ignoring the very rules designed to protect him. That realization marked the moment justice began to assemble itself, quietly and methodically, not as revenge, not as drama, but as alignment, rules, roles, and responsibility snapping back into place. Leaving no room to argue motive, only consequence. It was inevitable, documented, unavoidable, and entirely of their own making alone. His number appeared just after sunset. Unfamiliar and suddenly careful. Calvin Rourke didn't open with orders. He opened with my name, softened. "Erla, we need to talk." The confidence from Monday had thinned into urgency. I stepped away from the balcony, phone to ear, voice even. "I'm listening," I said. He spoke faster than usual, explaining symptoms without admitting cause. Shipments paused, partners waiting, legal breathing down his neck. "We just need you to log back in," he said. As if this were a favor, as if the boundary were negotiable. "I'm no longer authorized," I replied. Polite, final. Silence stretched. Then a recalibration, temporary access. He offered 5 minutes. The old reflex surfaced in him, the belief that systems bend for titles. I pictured the audit trail, the banner, the countdown doing what it was designed to do. Calm stayed put. "I can't," I said. Not without a formal reappointment. He tried a different angle. Apologies without nouns. Praise without memory. "You built this," he said. "You know how to keep it moving. I knew how to keep it lawful." There was a difference he had never learned. The room behind his voice was loud now. Muffled shouts, a chair scraping. Someone prompted him. He returned sharper. "What do you want?" Power finally asked permission. "Nothing," I said. The word landed heavier than any demand. "I'm on my honeymoon." That answer broke the script. Threats require leverage. Negotiations require terms. My refusal offered neither. He pressed once more. "Quieter. Just help us." I let the ocean speak between us. "I won't interfere." I said, "I won't obstruct. I'm simply not in the system anymore." The call ended without resolution. I set the phone down and felt the axis shift. Authority hadn't moved to me. It had moved back to process, and the absence of a price, of a condition, of a concession that was what unsettled them most, for the first time. Silence worked for me. not against me, and their urgency kept growing while my calm held. Precise, procedural, and utterly indifferent to titles. And consequences followed without warning. If you agree that refusing to log back in and respecting the boundary of authorization was the right call here, drop a 2 in the comments. Your voice matters because every opinion helps draw the line between accountability and abuse, and reminds companies that process only works when people are respected. I didn't hear the scrambling, but I could feel it. The tone of the calls shifted first. Then the pauses grew longer between messages. Calvin was no longer fixing problems. He was assigning them. Technical teams were blamed for unexpected behavior. HR was blamed for process gaps. When that didn't stick, my name began to circulate, paired with words like uncooperative and unavailable. None of it mattered. Systems don't care who panics loudest. Emails told a different story. Logs told it cleaner. Every alert carried timestamps, approvals, and warnings acknowledged weeks earlier. Every bypass request showed Calvin's signature. Every separation step showed my compliance. The record was boring, exhaustive, and impossible to spin. He called emergency meetings and filled them with motion. Slides flew. Acronyms multiplied. This is a tooling failure, he insisted. Legal interrupted. No, it isn't. HR tried to absorb blame. Compliance refused it. Each attempt to redirect pressure collapsed under its own documentation. The board stopped asking how fast operations could resume and started asking who had authorized what. That question changed the room. Confidence drained. Calvin defended speed as leadership, a director asked. At whose risk silence answered before he did. I stayed out of it. Deliberately. Participation would have softened the edges. Distance sharpened them. The more Calvin spoke, the smaller his authority sounded. Process has a way of exposing people who treat it like an inconvenience. By midweek, the resistance turned frantic. Consultants were floated. Temporary exceptions proposed. All rejected. Contracts required named oversight, uninterrupted accountability, and proof of continuity. None existed. Then the first partner paused shipments. Not canceled, paused. Their notice cited governance risk pending remediation. It was polite and devastating. Others followed, quietly aligning. That was the moment the struggle ended. You can argue with employees. You can pressure teams. You cannot negotiate trust once it withdraws. Calvin fought for narrative. The company began fighting for survival, and the difference between those two priorities finally became impossible to ignore. By then, the board's doubts hardened into decisions, and every delay amplified the cost of leadership chosen for speed alone that day. Nothing actually crashed. The dashboards stayed online. The code kept humming, and trucks still waited in orderly lines. What collapsed was quieter and faster. The stock slid in steps, then gaps. Analysts used words like confidence and exposure. Partners asked for assurances no one could give. Trust, once priced in, evaporated inside. Meetings multiplied and decisions shrank. Every update added another disclaimer. Legal spoke first, now. Compliance finished sentences. The question was no longer when operations would normalize, but whether leadership could be believed. I watched from a distance as headlines learned our name. Calvin tried to stand tall through it. He called it a temporary disruption. He promised recovery curves. Then the board suspended his operational authority pending review. The announcement was careful, bloodless, unmistakable. His badge still worked. His decisions did not. The applause he expected never arrived. The irony sharpened. The system he blamed hadn't failed anyone. It had protected everyone from pretending. Markets punish uncertainty more than delay. Customers forgive outages. They don't forgive governance. By the end of the week, a message reached me through counsel. The board wanted my time, not my loyalty, not my silence, my explanation. They weren't asking me to rescue Calvin or rewind his choices. They needed to understand why the machine behaved the way it did, and how to prevent another public unraveling. I agreed to listen. Conditions were simple: independent role, defined scope, no back-channel authority. I would explain design, not assign blame. They accepted quickly. Speed. At last. Found its place. The collapse settled into a new shape. Share price steadied. Bruised. Partners waited. Internally. People exhaled. Consequences had names now. And so did remedies. The company hadn't fallen because a system stopped. It fell because credibility did. And credibility, once broken, can only be rebuilt by respecting the limits that were ignored. I understood then that consequences scale faster than code, and leadership failures compound silently until markets, partners, and employees agree on one verdict, delivered without anger, without mercy, and without appeal, when accountability is delayed too long by choice alone at the top level. I returned without a badge and without illusions. This time, I entered as an independent advisor, contract clean, scope narrow, authority precisely defined. No one asked me to sit where I used to. That was the point. Distance had become credibility. The boardroom felt smaller. Calvin was there at first, pacing, rehearsing explanations. When counsel finished the introductions, the chair said, "This portion doesn't require you." Calvin looked at me, searching for leverage that wasn't there. He left with a tight smile and an empty notebook. I spoke calmly, because calm is persuasive when panic has failed. I explained the architecture in plain language. The system wasn't built to punish speed. It was built to survive it. It paused when accountability vanished, not to make a statement, but to prevent harm that couldn't be undone later. I told them the line they kept circling. The platform was designed to refuse service to organizations that remove human responsibility and call it efficiency. It doesn't negotiate with titles. It responds to roles, documentation, and continuity. When those disappear, it protects the public, the partners, and the company from itself. Questions followed, sharper now. Could it be restarted? Yes, under a properly appointed authority, with documented transfer and legal sign-off. Could Calvin do that? No. Not anymore. The rules applied evenly, even to the person who ignored them. That was the irony. The system could run again, but only outside his control. Power returned to process, not personalities. No override existed for embarrassment. When the meeting ended, I closed my folder and stood. I hadn't accused anyone. I hadn't defended myself. I had translated design into consequence. They thanked me with relief, not gratitude. I left knowing the machine would move again, slower at first, cleaner after, and knowing the loudest voice in the room had finally been removed by something quieter, older, and far less interested in winning than in being right. That outcome felt fitting, earned by restraint, documented by policy, and witnessed by everyone who mistook authority for immunity, including those who learned too late what governance actually means. I ended the consulting contract the way it began, clearly, briefly, without ceremony. The board thanked me and moved on. Calvin left the company quietly a week later. No farewell email, no last stand. Operations restarted under a properly appointed successor, documented, transferred, boring in the best way. The system breathed again, steady and compliant. With the work finished, I returned to the trip we had paused. I opened the laptop once more, not to intervene, but to close tabs and close chapters. Then I shut it, slid it into a drawer, and went back outside. The ocean didn't care who won. That was the point. Justice didn't shout or chase anyone. It aligned incentives, restored boundaries, and let consequences finish their work. Balance. I learned, isn't revenge, it's release, at last. Finally, I didn't shut anything down. I simply stopped holding it together for people who didn't deserve it. What stayed with me wasn't the outage or the headlines. It was the quiet power of choosing the right boundary. In moments like that, doing less can be the most responsible action. Respecting process isn't weakness. It's how you protect people you'll never meet. Emotionally, the hardest part wasn't being let go. It was resisting the urge to fix what I was no longer authorized to touch. Letting consequences unfold felt cold, but it was honest, and honesty scales. We're taught to be helpful at any cost, to smooth things over even when it erases us. But dignity has a line. When organizations treat people as expendable, the most ethical response may be to stop holding everything together for them. That isn't revenge. It's clarity, and clarity invites change. If you were in that position, cut off without care, what would you do? Would you step back and honor the boundary, or step in and absorb the damage again? Take a moment and think it through. I'd love to know where you're listening from right now. Drop your city or country in the comments and share how you might respond in a similar situation. Your voice matters more than you think, because every thoughtful comment helps others feel less alone. And every shared perspective sharpens our collective sense of what's right. If this story resonated, consider subscribing, liking, and sharing the video. One click from you can help this message reach someone who needs it today. Together, we can spread stories that restore balance and remind people that integrity still works. This story was fully created and produced by our team. We do not copy or borrow content from any other channel. Thank you for staying with us and listening until the end.